Hello and welcome to Views on News. I am Jawad Tehami. After International Monetary Fund said it had reached a staff-level agreement with the Pakistani authorities on the first review of the $7 billion extended fund facility program and also a new 28-month arrangement under the Resilience and Sustainability Facility, Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif has commended the team's efforts to achieve this particular milestone. And he was chairing the cabinet meeting, and during that he said, let me quote, particularly the common people who face difficulties, if their sacrifices weren't there, the staff level agreement would not have been possible as they face the burden of inflation, and the salaried class and the provinces contributed to the milestone, unquote. We also know for a fact the IMF team, which was present here in Pakistan from February the 24th up till March the 14th, had in-depth review regarding Pakistan's performance under the Extended Fund Facility Program of $7 billion that spans around 37 months. The IMF team was led by Mr. Nathan Porter. In the statement now, he has said, let me quote, over the past 18 months, Pakistan has made significant progress in restoring macroeconomic stability and rebuilding confidence despite a challenging global environment. The authorities reiterated their commitment to the Extended Fund Facility supported program and plan to supplement their efforts by advancing reforms under the RSF supported program, aiming to address long-standing economic vulnerabilities to climate shocks and build resilience, unquote. Also, after this particular staff level agreement was reached, we saw a bullish trend at the Pakistan stock exchanges, which rallied today, and they surged over 1,100 points. We have also seen the government here in Pakistan saying that the country's economy has performed better and grown better than the previous estimates. All these important aspects of a discussion in today's show. For that, we are honored to be joined in the studio by Dr. Manzoor Ahmed. He is member task force on FBR and tax reforms, also former ambassador to the World Trade Organization. Dr. Ahmed, thank you very much for your time, for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. Also in the studio, we are honored to be joined by Dr. Khalid Waleed, senior economist. Dr. Waleed, thank you very much for your time also for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. Dr. Manzoor Ahmed, let's specifically talk, when we specifically talk about this very long statement by Mr. Nathan Porter, it on different places talks about very categorically about that very commitment, the determination of the Pakistani authorities in implementing all those conditions under the Extended Fund Facility, leading to macroeconomic stability, overall indicators showing that the economy is on the right track. How big it was a challenge when it comes to stabilizing the economy at that particular point in time, and as per your understanding, how this performance had been, keeping in view in the light of that particular statement by Prime Minister, who is commended in the entire team's effort for unlocking of 1.3 RSF amount, also this first review of the Extended Fund Facility.
Well, two things. First, if you look at the past, whenever it came to an IMF review of any installment, and many a times we just got stuck on the first installment and never went past it. Okay. So looking at that, it's a big achievement. On the other hand, the fact that in the past 2 years there were several reforms, inflation was down, monetary policy was quite tight, and many other conditions of IMF, like bringing energy prices more to the actual cost basis, so you're not subsidizing. So all these things were relatively going well. Yeah. So this time, although I mean they didn't announce it here like the previous time, but they took another 2 weeks of negotiations on certain things. But it was relatively, I should say, easier task this time than it was for many of the previous IMF this thing.
Easier task to convince the IMF officials, the members of the team. But when we talk about that very particular challenge Pakistan was faced with on the economic front, stabilizing the economy firstly and then putting it on the right track, following all those conditions which were set by the International Monetary Fund, we saw that very standby arrangement transition from a standby arrangement to this particular extended fund facility. You also mentioned that it seems to be a big achievement, a milestone, that majority of the programs we've had in the past didn't even manage to go through past that very first review even.
Yes, I mean, you know, if you look at 3 or 4 big things for which IMF has always been concerned, one is, you know, in the past we used to play with this foreign exchange rate. So this time they were satisfied that it is market determined rate. It's not artificial. You know, that was one thing. Second, I think they were happy with the energy reforms. I mean, they're still asking a lot more to do.
Yeah.
But whatever could be done in the short time, they were relatively happy.
Yeah, that statement says that continuing fundamental cost reducing reforms in the energy sector to enhance viability and lower tariffs.
Yes, yes. Third major thing was that they wanted government to live within its own means and cut some expenditures.
Cutting expenditures.
And I think the fact that there was primary surplus, that means that other than paying for interest, we didn't go into minus. We used to be. We were on the plus side. So that was another thing they were happy about, satisfied about. So I think most things, most benchmarks that they had set, I think we were in good shape there.
Right. Dr. Waleed, what's your understanding of how big an achievement this one is, and what did it require? We've seen by that very statement it required a team effort. What were the challenges at that particular point in time, and what were those priorities which were set by the government and which were well achieved? Because when we look at the language and the tone of this particular statement, it goes on to commend as to the commitment of the authorities here in Pakistan. And Dr. Manzoor Ahmed also saying that largely the targets which were set and given, they were largely met, and IMF seems to be happier regarding that.
Well, Dr. Manzoor is right that Pakistan has this time followed the economic rule. There is a notion in macroeconomics that either you follow the economic rule or a political discretion. In past, we have followed this political discretion. If you plot a graph of Pakistan's fiscal deficit over the period of time, you will notice that whenever we sign an IMF agreement, it comes down. But after 2 or 3 years, it started to pile up again because we again base our planning on political discretion. And again, we sign agreement, IMF agreement, it comes down. This is the boom and bust cycle in Pakistan. This time around, we have followed this rule, and now we are on the right track, particularly on stabilization side, particularly on structural reforms, particularly on energy side, on the expenditure side of the equation. But still, we need to make it more consistent, more policy consistency is needed. But the good news is that we are on a right track. We are, I mean, not only banking on macroeconomic stability, but also making sure that through Benazir Income Support Program and targeted subsidies, although we are getting there, but still we are using it effectively. Secondly, energy sector is very important. IMF has commended that Pakistan has a plan to reorient energy subsidies, because energy subsidies, they constitute about 1 trillion rupee in total budget of Pakistan. So if we reorient these subsidies and do some cost recovery reforms, in that way we can reorient subsidies to some other sectors. Third thing that is very commendable in Pakistan right now is the tax policy. Although maybe we have missed some target, but the growth in revenue, that is a good thing. And fourthly, our finance minister on the floor of the house said that now we are going to follow a market determined economy, which is a very good sign, particularly to me, a macroeconomist, that if the markets are going to work, then exchange rate would be good, monetary policy would be very effective tool, interest rate would be in control. So overall, it is a good policy. Secondly, lastly, I would say that this stabilization measure, it should trickle down to the masses in a microeconomic prosperity form, so that there is, I would say, stabilization at macro level as well as at micro level. That should be the goal, and I think we are on the right track. And the key thing is consistency, policy consistency.
It should trickle down to the grassroots level, to the very basic of the society. We've seen a Prime Minister particularly lauding the salaried class as well as the provinces. Let's specifically talk about the salaried class. And also he has mentioned the sacrifices which have been rendered by the common people. When that directly relates to when we talk about the dividends of this particular stability in macro economy trickling down to the grassroots level. Now, there was a pressure, there was a burden when we talk about on the common people as well as the salaried class. That's why there has been a specific mention on the part of Prime Minister. What hardships common people had to face, and how this particular suggestion that you've talked about of the trickle-down effect could be manifested?
Well, trickle down would essentially mean in broadening the burden over larger group of the people, particularly in terms of broadening the tax net.
Right.
Because salaried class has long bore the burden of Pakistan's inefficient revenue collection and expenditure system. Now we have to do, what we have to do is we need to broaden this tax base, not increasing the tax rate, so that tax policy is complementing Pakistan's economic growth and not economic growth that is, let's say, overheating the economy. It is an economic growth of middle income group of Pakistan, so that Pakistan have this balanced sort of economic growth, and we have this long-term prosperity plan in focus. So we need to broaden the tax base. Maybe we need to separate the tax policy with tax administration, so that there is effective tax collection, not burdenizing those who are already burdened. Maybe looking into agriculture tax as well, and provinces are already doing that, and IMF has recognized that they are doing good things about agriculture income tax.
Yeah.
So again, digitalization would also be another thing that we need to focus, particularly in terms of making our informal economy more formal, so that we are dividing this huge burden of maybe, I would not say unproductive expenditures, but expenditure on larger base of the people, so that we can incentivize or lower the burden on the salaried class.
Now,
That
what could be the possible manifestations of that particular incentivization to the common people? I'll come back to you. Dr. Manzoor Ahmed, now this particular statement, that very sacrifice that has been rendered by the salaried class, in particular the common people in the country, Prime Minister lauding that particular sacrifice. What needs to be done? Dr. Waleed is of the view it's all about broadening the tax base rather than increasing the tax rate. We've also seen Finance Minister on a number of occasions identifying core areas where there could be a considerable and a phenomenal increase in revenue collection that include the retail, the wholesale, agriculture, as well as the real estate. There has been a commendation on the part of IMF when we talk about agricultural income tax. All the provinces have contributed to this particular effort. Your understanding regarding the broadening of the tax base when we talk about these four identified areas in particular?
Well, I mean, as the Prime Minister acknowledged that it's unfair that, salary people, they can't run away. So you just put more taxes on them, more tax on them. And compared to, you say, the retailers or wholesalers or many other sectors of the economy, they're not really paying their due. And then the pressure comes on salary sector. And also combined with the fact that, okay, this year the inflation has come down, but previously the inflation was quite high.
Yeah.
And then also the energy prices, like electricity, like gas, were brought on market rates. Previously they were subsidized. So the salaried people suffered quite a bit. Hopefully hopefully the the government will keep its promises and lower this burden on them and spread it further. As Dr. Wali is just saying that now this provincial governments are also a part of it, so they've also committed to collect more taxes. Especially the big thing there is agriculture, and previously they were not agreeing. They were not agreeing at all to bring it in tax net.
How big a step that is, because let me quote that excerpt from that statement by Mr. Nathan Porter, specifically talking about the role of the provinces as far as the agriculture income tax is concerned. Quote, notably all 4 provinces have amended their agriculture income tax regimes, an important step towards greater tax equity and expanding the tax base, although effective implementation is crucial to the ATI's success and greater fiscal devolution in fiscal year 26. The authorities also remain committed to improving public financial management. So what your analysis regarding this?
My analysis is that what he's saying is that in principle, previously they were not agreeing. Provinces were kind of keeping out of it, and it was extremely difficult to convince them that after this 18th Amendment, things have moved there, so they have to take more burden, and eventually they have agreed. So that's one thing. But what he is saying is that this is one thing in practically, theoretically to agree to this.
Right.
But that's quite another thing. How much will they contribute? If it's just nominal, it's not really worth it. But if they really, because a lot of, many people do this, what I should say, money laundering. They earn their money here, but they show their agriculture, this thing, and they were not paying taxes. Now at least they'll be in the net. So this is, I think, what it means, that the provinces are now a part of this, and how effective it is, that will be seen over
right. Dr. Wali, your understanding, your analysis regarding this particular part of this statement regarding the agriculture income tax, as it also talks about effective implementation that is crucial to IT's success and greater fiscal devolution for fiscal year 26 in particular.
Well, I would agree with Dr. Manzoor that we need to sort of think in a way that a tax system that is more equitable, particularly across the sectors. Right now, many of the sectors, they are overburdened, but some of the sectors, they do not bear the burden of tax at all. So we need to bring this equity. Second thing that I would like to mention here is we need to formalize our economy in a way that there is more tax base, people and sectors, they are joining the tax net. Thirdly, what we need to think about is that one step ahead of it, that how we are going to recycle the tax revenue. That would be very important, because if we collected so much tax and it is not complementing the economic growth, not generating some sort of a productive economy or being part of the productive economy, what we are doing is for years to come, the tax revenues would decline. So we need to make it compliant with our economic growth, not just unbalanced growth, a balanced growth over the sector, so that the equity in tax collection, tax revenues, that can be reflected into the equity in economic growth of all the sectors.
For the general understanding of the common mass, how would you simplify that? How could that be manifested once translated from that very collection to that very economic growth?
Well, that would be a very, I would say, integrated or long-term sort of approach. That is one thing, that using tax collected from the agriculture sector in a way that we are converting our agriculture sector into a agriculture industry, and we are making finished products and broadening our export base as well. So that would be a recycling of tax revenue in a way that is more economic growth compliant.
So you already talked about the energy sector. This particular statement, as I've already mentioned one part of it, continuing fundamental cost reducing reforms in the energy sector to enhance viability and lower tariffs. The authorities' timely implementation of electricity and gas tariff adjustments, along with the early impact of reforms, has helped reduce the stock and flow of the sector's circular debt, and both should remain a priority. It is necessary to accelerate cost side reforms. I want your analysis regarding this, and also including improving distribution efficiencies, integrating captive power into the electricity grid, enhancing the transmission system privatizing inefficient generation companies and expanding renewable energy adoption. At the same time, it is recommended a number of fronts where work actually needs to be done. So starting from the first one, the cost side reforms.
Well, if you see the tariff structure in Pakistan, it is highly flawed. I mean, like you have an average electricity cost like 30 rupees, but you are cross-subsidizing your protected consumers, like they are paying around 7 to 10 rupee per unit, and the burden of this subsidy is being borne by those who are consuming more electricity, and that rate goes up to like 47 to 50 rupees. So if we sort of build our policies in a way that we get rid of these cross subsidies and we do this tariff rationalization, in that way we would be not only saving the subsidies, we would also be generating more grids demand, which means that we have fixed charges, and if the grids demand increases, those fixed charges would be divided with the higher base, and that would be declining in per capita terms. So again, tariff would be declining. So we need to look for a solution that that sort of solve this dilemma for Pakistan's policymakers in energy sector, that how we are going to use Pakistan's tariff reforms to sort of reorient the subsidies. One very good way is maybe subsidizing solar for these protected consumers, rooftop solar for these protected consumers, so that we are not paying the subsidies to these consumers and we are lowering the effective tariff rate, and in that way the electricity demand would increase and this virtuous cycle of economy and energy would continue. In that way, maybe tariff or cost side reforms can be done. Secondly, you also mentioned that these privatization of distribution companies, because inefficient distribution companies, what is happening here is there are few good distribution companies and many inefficient distribution companies. Just to give you an example, in Islamabad Electric Supply Company, the electricity rate is around 40 rupee per unit, but it goes up to 70 rupee per unit in PESCO or KESCO or in TESCO. So what the consumers are doing, or the government is providing subsidy to cross-subsidize these distribution companies. So if there is corporatization of these distribution companies or privatization, then this burden can be mitigated, and we can bring efficiency to these distribution companies, and recovery rates can also be sort of increased and enhanced. Lastly, for this power sector, maybe we need to invest in the transmission side as well, because the transmission side is almost neglected in Pakistan. We need to not only focus the reforms agenda in generation side, renegotiating the power purchasing agreements in a way that is not eroding market's confidence. Secondly, we need to distribute reforms in the distribution side, but the key thing is how we reform our transmission side. Maybe one good thing is that there is independent system and market operator in the business now. So we need to have this holistic reforms in the power sector so that the burden can be reduced, particularly on the consumers, and that would be trickling down the macroeconomic stability towards the microeconomic prosperity.
Right, Dr. Manzoor Ahmed, would you like to comment on any of these recommendations made by the IMF when it comes to the gas and electricity energy sector in particular overall, regarding the cost side reforms, improving distribution efficiencies?
Well,
any of it?
I second what he said. I mean, maybe one or two other points. One was that we this circular debt, energy debt.
Yeah.
It was just climbing, and now with this, getting the market prices for gas and electricity. Yeah. So this big jump has come. The other thing was that there were some historical reasons. There were some, say, industry units who were getting this captive power plants. So they had these gas fields, which they got very, very low price compared to others. So that the government is now bringing them in the normal rent, so that they should pay, they gradually, like everybody else. So I think these two, and I think the IMF is also saying that go more towards renewable. And I think that's another thing.
So just one thing to add here is that Pakistan's grid demand is declining. I mean, due to higher tariff and due to these distributed generation rooftop solar. So what IMF is suggesting and government is suggesting is that maybe bringing these captive power plants to national grid so that the grid's demand increases. Again, that would sort of reduce the per capita capacity charges. Second thing, if you see the consumption mix of Pakistan's electricity sector, you'll see that industries ratio is very low as compared to residential side. So what we are going to doing is we are generating electricity through dollars, consuming dollars through imported fuels, but we are consuming it on unproductive sector. So maybe we need to increase the industrial base in our electricity consumption so that this equation can be corrected as well.
Right. Moving towards the renewable energy sources, ideally where should be the start from, and what is the potential?
Well, in Pakistan right now, there is enough installed capacity. What we need to do is we need to maybe invest more on distributed generation, linking Pakistan's industrial sector to the Pakistan's energy sector so that the productive demand can be increased. If there is industrialization in Pakistan, the demand would increase. And then we need to install these power plants. Second thing, maybe from the renewable energy side, maybe we can look into some early retirement of fossil fuel based power plants in Pakistan, and there are examples, there are initiatives exist in the modern world. Maybe some of them are just energy transition partnerships like South Africa and Indonesia did. They got dollars from G7 countries and they retired some of their coal power plants. And then there is a concessional loan facility by Asian Development Bank that is known as energy transition mechanism. So maybe at the same time retiring some of the fossil fuel based power plants and then adding renewable based power plants, that would be the key. And particularly in terms of resilience and sustainability facility, maybe Pakistan needs to invest more on Pakistan's transportation side as well. EV revolution, that is the way forward. Just to give you some numbers, if we reduce our petroleum bill by 30%, petroleum demand by 30%, it can generate up to 3.6 billion rupee per annum. So that way we can bring in our EV systems, particularly two-wheelers and three-wheelers, so that we have this a beautiful nexus of economy, energy and environment. In that way, maybe resilience and sustainability facility that can be a catalyst for Pakistan's renewable energy.
I'll come to that very particular point. That's a very important point. That's a new climate financing, and Pakistan requested that one, and that has been unlocked $1.3 billion. There are a number of recommendations at the end of that particular statement also by the IMF. I'll come to you for that also. Dr. Manzoor Ahmed, when we talk about expanding the tax base and keeping the tax rate, there are not that much of recommendations of increasing the tax rate. Rather, there should be a focus on the part of the authorities to expand it. My question is, it leads us to an interesting scenario. When we talk about more of revenue generation or the tax collection, and until unless those particular identified sectors, for example, wholesale, retail, real estate and agriculture, are not properly brought into the tax net, do you think it would be viable to reduce the tax rate?
Well, it does work. It does work in a way that when the tax rate is too high, people try to escape it, one way or the other. That's why Pakistan's grey economy is, the percentage is much higher than others. It's not only in domestic taxes, but the same thing is true about our import tariffs, which are very high. So we get, I don't know, but the smuggling estimates that about $6-7 billion worth of goods are smuggled in. So when you bring it down, these things come down. So that's obvious, and there'll be if you just if the tax rate is 60%, it's extremely difficult for people to pay. I mean, for some people, it's become very high because it's not only the normal tax, there's surcharge, etc., all that, and then also people try to then move out. Nowadays it's very easy, especially in some sectors like IT. You could be sitting here, working here, or you could open a company in Dubai or anywhere, and you could be working from there. So it's very difficult to get them. So if you bring down, because some countries have done it very successfully, some East Europeans like Romania, etc., they give very special rates, say 5% to IT, these people, IT outsourcing. And previously, these Romanians used to go to various European countries, work as domestic. Now, other Europeans are coming to Romania to do this because the tax difference so much, and the country is becoming very affluent. So this works, yes, if they bring down the taxes.
So, do I understand from your take, can reducing the tax rate could serve as a guarantee of more of tax collection? Is that so?
Yes. It does, because many countries, they for example, recent 2-3 months ago, there was the Georgian finance minister, and he said, we drastically brought it down, and he said, suddenly the corruption level went down, where it's, almost from, we were he said that they were the most corrupt in Europe, then they became the most honest, because the rate was so low that people would not go for that. So it's got many benefits by bringing down the tariff rate, so people are incentivized to work harder and to declare their income, etc. Now, with our current system, we encourage them to,
So, Dr. Waleed, what's your understanding? Do you think it could serve as a guarantee of a reduction of the tax rate to bring in more and more people, or a guarantee for the people to voluntarily come and, register themselves as taxpayers?
Well, I would say in theoretical economics, there is a Laffer curve phenomena. Laffer curve shows the relationship between tax rate and tax revenues. It is a non-linear relationship. When tax rate is lower, your tax revenues are increasing. When it crosses a certain point and you continue to increase the tax rate, it comes down because now it is not compliant with your economic growth. So what we need to do is we need to find this sweet spot where tax rate is complementing our economic growth, not burdenizing particularly the middle class, so that middle class can be the engine of economic growth. In that way, obviously, through tax rate or declining the tax rate, you can increase the revenues and you not creating the deadweight loss on the economy.
Okay, when we talk about this particular performance at the Pakistan Stock Exchanges, right after that particular announcement, that statement by IMF, we saw a considerable bullish trend at the PSX with over 1,100 points gained today, closing at 1,17,772.31 today, which is 1,139.15 increase from the previous day's close. Do you think this was the only trigger for this particular bullish trend for today, or are there other factors, underlying factors for this particular surge in PSX?
Well, I would say Pakistan stock market, that respond to the good news and bad news. So when there is a good news, it responds in a good way. What we need to do is we need to take a step ahead. Now we need to think about what companies are registered on stock market and how to broaden and diversify that portfolio, how we can brought new companies to the stock market so that new innovation and new product or finished good economy that can be fostered in Pakistan. So I would say that stabilization and particularly this news from IMF that triggered this trend, and this trend will continue because the government is doing structural reforms, and the gradual approach, particularly from the monetary side and inflation that has been down, and secondly reforms in terms of foreign exchange stability, that would also be a stabilizing news for stock market. So we need to think about bringing more innovation to the stock market and how we can leverage stock market, particularly in terms of capital formulation and reorienting capital from unproductive sector to productive sector, so that the industry grow and more companies can register on stock market.
Okay, so when we talk about the potential of this particular Pakistan stock exchanges, we've seen the psychological barriers been broken a number of times, record bullish trends have been witnessed. As per the monthly outlook and update with the finance division, there's been 81.1% increase as to this particular performance of PSX. As I already mentioned, it closed at 117,772.31. Up till what mark do you see it could potentially go?
Well, that
if
would
this
be
particular trend continues in future?
that would
as
be a
well?
bit speculative, but still I see a growth trajectory in stock market index, because we do not see any risk associated with the economy right now. We are on a very good stabilization path. But again, we need to think about that how we use the tool of stock market in Pakistan to attract more investment, more long-term investment in Pakistan, and how it can be used as a tool to enhance productive economy of Pakistan. That would be the key thing for Pakistan, particularly keeping the bigger picture and long-term horizon of macroeconomic stability in Pakistan. Last thing I think would be the continuity and consistency of the policy, credibility of the government, and contract reinforcement that would be needed to generate more revenue or bringing more confidence to the market.
Right, Dr. Manzoor Ahmed, when you talk about the performance of the PSX, does it serve as a barometer or for the overall health of the economy?
Oh yes, I think. I mean, if the news had come that IMF has not agreed, you would have seen a big fall. So for Pakistan's small economy, this is big news, because every time, for the time being at least, we are having this big trouble of sustainable, just keeping our economy stable, and we can't really afford any bad news. So this was taken as good news, and that's why the stock market. And also I should say that although I mean it's doubled over the years or something, it's been quite bullish. But if you look at it, 6-7 years ago, and in dollar terms, we are not still there. So there's a lot of potential to grow in terms of dollars, I would say.
But the market capitalization in terms of dollars has also increased 55%.
Yes.
Isn't it considerable one?
Yes, all those things are, because if the price of stocks goes up, the capitalization also goes up. So all those things are happening. But still, I think in terms of if you see where it was, say, in 2017, and compare in terms of dollars, because you see we had at the time, I don't know, it was 100 rupees or something. Now it's almost 280 rupees. So it's there's still scope.
I get your point. One last very important thing, the development that unlocking of $1.3 billion regarding that resilience and sustainability facility. What is this particular thing for the general awareness of the common people in terms of Pakistan's being vulnerable to that very climate change, its adverse impact? We saw those floods back in 2022 as well. How this particular unlocking $1.3 billion is going to help Pakistan deal with that particular problem primarily. Then I'll go to the recommendations or the areas which are to be focused that IMF talks about.
This is a separate facility for low income and vulnerable countries. Right. Pakistan is low income and it's very vulnerable. It's among the top 10 countries which are going to be affected by climate change.
Right.
And I think the IMF is feeling that IMF has been pushing Pakistan to spend more and more on adaptability, on water, on all these. So we've had these floods, etc., to make the country more adaptable. But realizing that we don't really have enough extra funds to do that. So that's why I think they have come up with this extra fund, so that we can move more in that direction.
Building resilience through adaptation.
Adaptation is one thing, but then you see we have challenges with water. We have because if there's water, if we don't get enough rains, they're drying up, our glaciers are melting, etc. And so we have to adapt ourselves. And also, I mean, whenever there's floods, everything gets washed off. And we last floods, it was estimated that we'll damage something like 15 billion and rebuilding another 15 billion, 30 billion. So, they don't want to, I mean, some other countries used to have similar problems, like China.
So we lost, what I'm curious about to understand here at the moment is that you already mentioned we lost $30 billion. A couple of days before, there was a statement by Finance Minister regarding as to the pledges of $10 billion at that particular point in time were made. 1/3 of that was actually received. So keeping in view this particular unlocking of $1.3 billion, although it's a step in the right direction, But do you think it's sufficient enough, or Pakistan needs more on that particular front, more of that very assistance on the part of the international organizations as well as the international community?
Yes, obviously this is not enough, but at least this is a beginning. Once, you know, whatever IMF agrees, even this 7 billion is not all that big amount, but because of that 7 billion, lots of other billions start coming in. I
Right.
mean, you know, the World Bank said, okay, we'll give you, you know, so many 10 billion, and other countries, because there's a feeling that now that Pakistan has been able to meet those conditions, so it's ready for reforms, it's doing for its reforms, and so this 1.3 billion will attract far more.
So it's Dr. Wali, that's going to have, firstly we do understand it's going to have a practical implication as well. Also the symbolic implication after this particular assistance on the part of the International Monetary Fund regarding Pakistan addressing those climate change and its impacts, there is going to be more of realization among the other international organizations as well as the major powers, particularly when you talk about the developed world, to which United Nations Secretary General at that time addressed that it was more of a matter of climate justice rather a matter of charity.
Well, now climate justice and the issues revolving climate, they have translated into macro critical risks as well. One flood that can erode a whole year's saving in Pakistan, like Dr. Manzoor mentioned that in 2022, 30 billion USDs were lost, and at that time Pakistan's GDP was 300 billion USDs, and the saving rate was 10%, which means 30 billion was lost, the whole saving of Pakistanis of the year was lost. So what this facility is going to do is, this facility is going to strengthen the institutional arrangement, particularly those are directly connected with macroeconomic critical risk proofing of macro economy of Pakistan, particularly in terms of building resilience, in terms of climate proofing or economic growth projections, particularly building the resilience of Pakistan's people, national adaptation plans, and maybe on the mitigation side. But what it will do is it will bring more climate finance to Pakistan, and it will bring confidence, particularly in climate realm, so that Pakistan can attract more and more financing, and maybe private sector that can be also be encouraged to invest on sustainability initiative, and that again will build on Pakistan's national adaptation plan and the mitigation side.
Right, Dr. Khalid Waleed, senior economist, joining us in the studio. Thank you very much for taking time out. Dr. Manzoor Ahmed, member task force on FPR and tax reforms, former ambassador to the World Trade Organization. Thank you very much for your time, also for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. With that, we come to the end of today's episode. Till the next one, take good care of yourselves.